Hello, how's it going? Welcome to anybody who is already here for today's Touch 'em All Best Bets Baseball show. Brandon is not available to be here today, so it'll be just me. Show will probably move a little bit more quickly today because it's just me, so I'll try to not go too fast. Going to give it about 2 minutes. So anybody who wants to watch and is maybe straddling in a second late can do so. But excited to dive through today's card. Been a little bit cold recently on my picks, but it is what it is. Show must go on. Process doesn't change, and I remain confident that I will produce winners. So, um, without further ado, I think I'll go ahead and jump in on the first game here. That is going to be game number 901, 902. It's the Chicago Cubs and Miami Marlins. Marcus Stroman on the mound for the Cubs. He's 2-2 with a 2.17 ERA so far this season. He's been pretty darn good. Lefty Jesus Luzardo takes the mound for the Fish. He's 2-1 with a 3.62. Games at 6:40 Eastern time. I am going to be on the Cubs on the money line here. I think it's the right side with Stroman on the mound. I can get that at about minus 105 on the Cubs. There is the best I've seen. I've seen it as high as about 120. I would take it at either number. I like the Cubs quite a bit. You look at Marcus Stroman recently. He was lights out in his first four starts of the season, and he was really pretty good through the first few innings against the Dodgers in his last start on Sunday as well, before they hit 3 home runs, kind of all at once against him. But it's not really taking me off of Stroman here. He's pitching in Miami, which is very much a pitcher's park. The Marlins offense, it's just not similar at all to what he saw with the Dodgers. There's a team that he pitched pretty well against last year. You look at his expected numbers, expected ERA around 3.4, so maybe not quite as spectacular as what we've seen from him, but good enough that against a team like Miami that is 28th in expected FIP against right-handed pitching, I think he should pitch pretty well here. It's hard for me to imagine him getting pushed around. You look at the other side with Jesus Luzardo. Luzardo's been really good too. His 3.62 ERA is right about what you'd expect from him. He's been above average above average across the board on Baseball Savant, if you look there. But this is a much tougher matchup. The Cubs have been really good against left-handed pitching. We saw them rough up Julio Urias. They had some success against Clayton Kershaw as well when they took on the Dodgers. This is a team that just hits lefties well, and they're playing pretty good baseball overall. They just took 2 out of 3 from San Diego. Stumbled a bit in the Dodgers series, but they were playing really well before then too. You look at Luzardo recently too. He's been scuffling a little bit. His last 3 starts, 3 earned, 3 earned, 4 earned. 8 hits, 6 hits, 8 hits. 3 home runs overall. So he hasn't exactly been lighting it up. He's been kind of just okay of late. So I do give the starting pitching advantage to the Cubs. Cubs, who are 122 WRC plus against lefties, that's 22% above average. Marlins 16% below average against righties. Looking at the bullpens, Cubs bullpen ranks 5th in baseball in expected FIP. Miami's bullpen 28th, as I mentioned before. So, big advantages for the Cubs, I think, here. I think the bullpen advantage is huge. Starting pitching advantage is moderate. Overall, they're playing better ball. So give me the Cubs at anything close to a pick 'em here on the money line. I think they should probably be favored. So that's going to be the first best bet of the day. Moving on to the second game we've got here, that is Pittsburgh Pirates and Washington Nationals, 903, 904 on the betting board. It's going to be Rich Hill pitching for Pittsburgh, the 43-year-old lefty. He'll be taking on Chad Kuhl pitching for the Nats. Rich Hill so far this year, 2-2 with a 4.85 ERA. Chad Kuhl 0-1 with a 7.36. The Pirates are a medium-sized favorite here, about minus 125, minus 130 was the last I saw. I should probably, have updated lines up as well, because a lot of these games I handicapped last night. In general with Rich Hill, I've lost money on him this season. I'll give it to you straight, because we're looking at Pirates minus 140 now. I've lost money on him this season because regression there continues to be a call for regression negatively with him. You look even now, his expected ERA is closer to 7 than it is to 4. He's at 6.90 on that. He's allowed 17 base runners over his last 11 innings of work, but he's only allowed 2 runs. So he's doing a great job of stranding runners. There is obviously a certain degree of skill to that, but it's also not sustainable. If you're going to continue to allow 17 runners every 11 innings, you're going to give up a lot more runs than he's been giving up. That being said, the Nationals are not exactly a great offense. So it could be a spot where he has some success. They are above average against lefties. Hard to really know what's going to happen there, but I kind of want to stay away from Rich Hill for once. I'm kind of sick of losing money expecting him to blow up. On the other side, Chad Kuhl has been pretty terrible. His expected ERA is about 7.5. He's allowed 4 or more earned runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. And he's yet to make a pitch in the 6th inning this season, so he's not exactly pitching deep. His last start, he only pitched into the 4th. Only gave up 1 earned at Minnesota, but had 4 walks, 7 total base runners in a little over 3 innings. So we haven't seen any success from him yet. He's near the bottom of every StatCast category. He's been pretty poor. So, as much as I'd like to fade Rich Hill here, I can't do it with Chad Kuhl on the mound. Pittsburgh about minus 140 makes sense to me. Over under 9. I could see an argument for an over there given these starters, but not quite willing to go there. There are better games on the board to bet than this one. Bumping on down to Braves Mets, their first divisional matchup of the year. This is 9:05, 9:06 on the betting board from Citi Field. This game will be a 7:10 Eastern time start. It's going to be Max Fried on the mound for the Braves, the lefty, taking on another lefty in David Peterson for the Mets. Fried has been lights out so far, 1-0 with a 0.60 ERA. David Peterson, not so much, 1-3 with a 7.36. Over under 8 in this spot. Braves minus 1.5, priced around plus 125. I am on the Braves here. That's why I've got the Braves hat on today. First half and full game. First 5 innings, I got him at minus 135. Full game, got him at minus 135. I love Max Fried in this spot. He's really been excellent this season. 1 run allowed over 15 innings of work. He's also on a scoreless streak of at least 11 2/3 innings, dating through his last 2 starts. And these are against San Diego and Houston in those last 2 starts, so he's not exactly been against scrub lineups. He's been pitching really well. That expected ERA, 1.79, you just don't see numbers like that, and I'm sure it won't stay there as the season goes along. But really, really impressive. Top 5% of Baseball Savant across his contact profile. And this is a Mets team that's around average against left-handed pitching, WRC plus 103, so nothing really to write home about. On the flip side, I love the matchup for Atlanta against David Peterson. Peterson has obviously struggled. The numbers make that obvious, and the Braves have a 143 WRC plus against lefties. That's 3rd best in baseball. They're an absolute nightmare. You look at his last start, Peterson allowed 7 earned runs at San Francisco. He's allowed 5 or more earned runs in 3 of his last 4. And over his last 2 starts, 11 combined innings, he's allowed 5 homers. So just not going well for him. And Atlanta is not a good matchup for a lefty that is struggling. You look at the bullpens here. Atlanta's bullpen ranks 6th in baseball in expected FIP so far this year. Mets rank 16th. Solid advantage for Atlanta there as well. So I'm taking Atlanta on both sides here. I like them first 5. I like them full game. I think it's a good spot for Max Fried to keep it going, and a good spot for Atlanta to stay hot against a Mets team that just lost a series to the Nationals. So do with that what you will. Moving on here, heading up to the mountains, we've got Diamondbacks, Rockies. This game is going to be at 8:40 p.m. Eastern time. This one is going to be Merrill Kelly on the mound for Arizona, a righty. He's 1-3 with a 3.42 ERA. Solid, albeit not spectacular. They're a small favorite, minus 130 over Kyle Freeland, the lefty going for Colorado. 2-2 with a 4.28 ERA, about plus 110 on the money line for them. Over under 11.5. That's a pretty standard Coors Field total. Arizona, they've been playing pretty good ball. They're in first place right now in the NL West at 14-12. You look at Kyle Freeland on the bump for Colorado. 3 really good starts to start the season for him. Over his first 18 2/3 innings, he allowed only 2 earned runs. Then his home start against Pittsburgh was a disaster, 9 earned runs in 2 innings. And then he bounced back with an okay start at Philly, allowing 4 runs in 6. So overall, I'm not super high on Freeland. But I'm also, he's been really volatile, and he's a hard guy to handicap. You look at his 2 innings against Arizona last year, they really sort of embody that. He threw 6 scoreless innings in the first one. Second time he faced them, 6 innings, 6 earned. So it's hard to know what to make of Kyle Freeland. I'm not going to sit here and try to figure it out. This is a game I'm staying away from. Give you a little bit of a handicap on Merrill Kelly. He's quietly been scuffling a little bit. 3 or more earned runs allowed in 3 of his last 4 starts. 4 or more walks in 4 of his 5 starts. That's the more concerning stat for me. He's not commanding the strike zone very well. I don't have a ton of faith in either starter, but these are also both starters that have shown that they can be pretty darn good in the past too. So, pure stay away spot here on both the total and the side. I think Arizona being a small favorite, it makes sense to me. Jumping into the next game here, the nightcap in the National League is going to be Cardinals at Dodgers from Chavez Ravine tonight. My Dodgers are a bit of a mess. Half the team is on paternity leave. They got real busy during the All-Star break last year. Couple righties going in this one. It's going to be Jack Flaherty for St. Louis, returning to his hometown to take on the Dodgers against righty Dustin May for LA. Both of them have been pretty good. They both have ERAs in the low threes. Dodgers are a small favorite here. Last I saw last night was right around minus 140. Let's see what we're looking at today. We've got, still sitting around minus 140. Over under still sitting at 8.5. I don't mind that line. I think it's about right. If anything, I lean towards St. Louis. I'm not playing it, but Jack Flaherty has pitched really well against the Dodgers in his career, and he's pitched really well at Dodger Stadium in his career. He seems to really get up for that start. It's in his hometown. He'll have a ton of family there. Dustin May has been solid but not spectacular. His expected ERA around 3.8. He's not getting the swing and miss this year that he got the last couple of years. He's really relying on soft contact, and he's done a pretty good job of inducing that soft contact. But he hasn't quite been meeting the lofty expectations that he set for himself. That being said, his last start at Wrigley was pretty darn good. Earned him a W over Stroman on Sunday. I think both of these starters, there's reason to believe in them. I think you could make a decent argument for the under here. What's keeping me off of it, the Dodgers bullpen has been terrible, and the Dodgers are really not holding runners on. They're not doing any of the little things. My concern is that St. Louis gets the run game going. They could end up kind of breaking this thing open. And the Cardinals really haven't been great either. Cardinals are 9-16 on the season. These are both underachieving teams. And these are both teams with WRC pluses actually above average against righties anyway. Dodgers 121, St. Louis 106. So a lot of back and forth confusing factors for me on this game, and not really enough conviction on anything to want to play it. So I'm going to go ahead and stay away. Hopefully the Dodgers can start to get some players back from the paternity list, start to get some players back from injury, and maybe start paying a little bit of attention to detail and hold some runners on, play some defense, and not look awful. But we'll see. Next game, this one actually starts pretty soon. This is a 4:10 Eastern time game, 1:10 Pacific. The Royals at the Twins from Target Field. Twins getting some of those day games in early in the season while it's still freezing cold up in Minneapolis. This is going to be Jordan Lyles, a righty on the mound for Kansas City against Pablo Lopez on the mound for Minnesota. I don't have anything here. Twins are a huge favorite, minus 250, minus 275 actually as of now. I think that's about right. You could make an argument for the Twins on the run line, and that was the initial way that I wanted to look, was to lay the 1.5 with the Twins. I can't quite get there. Just because of how Lopez struggled in his last start. Washington put up 5 runs against him. That's not an offense that you would expect him to struggle with. He has been excellent overall. I might regret not playing this on the run line. The other thing that kind of keeps me off of it is that Jordan Lyles actually looked pretty good in his last start at Minnesota, or against Minnesota early this season. 5 1/3, just 1 earned. He has allowed 4 more earned runs in his last 4 starts, and he has allowed 5 homers in his last 14 innings of work. But he threw 8 innings in his last start, 6 innings in the outing before that. That tells me that he's actually pitching pretty well and just getting hurt near the end of his outing. So, I wonder if maybe there's an adjustment made with the Royals there where they try to get him out of the game a little earlier. Obviously Kansas City's bullpen's nothing to write home about. if you wanted to play Minnesota on the run line here, laying -1.5, I don't hate it. You can get that around -130. I think it's a decent look, but at this point in time, I'm a little bit scared off of it. So I'm going to go ahead and stay away. Orioles at Tigers. This game is going to be 913, 914 on your betting card. A couple of Rodriguez is going at it here. We've got Grayson Rodriguez on the mound, the righty for Baltimore, against Eduardo Rodriguez, the lefty on the mound for Detroit. This game is going to be a 6:40 Eastern time start locally. And, I think my instinct is always to fade Detroit against a righty. They last season were 30th in baseball in WRC plus against right-handed pitching. So far this season, they're 29th. They just don't hit righties, and Baltimore tends to hit lefties pretty well. Why am I not on Baltimore at a cheap money line around -130? It's about Eduardo Rodriguez for Detroit. He has quietly been one of the best pitchers in baseball recently. He's thrown 15 scoreless innings over his last two starts against Cleveland and this Baltimore team. 16 strikeouts and no walks in those starts. Game before that, 6 innings, 1 earned on the road at Toronto. They've got plenty of righties in that lineup too, so that's pretty impressive. His overall expected ERA 2.68. So a lot to like with Eduardo Rodriguez. Baltimore's been really good against lefties, but at some level, I don't care. He just carved them up in his last start. It's not a guy I want to fade right now at all. On the other side, Grayson Rodriguez, top pitching prospect for the O's. You see flashes of it. His baseball savant page is pretty middling. Expected ERA around 5. He threw 5 shutout innings against Detroit in his last start. A lot of that's because Detroit really struggles to hit right-handed pitching. Um, you know, I wanted to look at unders here, but the numbers are already set so low. 7.5 full game would be more intriguing if I trusted these bullpens. First 5 innings, if I can get a 4 at a decent price, I would look at that under. But mostly I'm seeing 3.5. So the 1-4 I'm seeing out there is -135 to the under, and that's a little too rich for my blood. So just going to go ahead and stay away from this game. I don't think a play on Detroit would be an awful way to look, especially in the first 5 innings. But overall, I just, it's not quite a game I have an appetite for. I'd love to see those totals take up and I can, hit an under on it. But for now, it's a stay away from me. Moving down the line, we've got Mariners at Blue Jays. They're starting a 3-game series in Toronto tonight. 9-1-5, 9-1-6 on the betting board. Seattle turning back to the righty Luis Castillo, 2-0 with a 1.52 ERA this year. He has been very solid. Alek Manoah getting the start for Toronto, 1-1 with a 5.13. His numbers do not look up to his standards so far. This game lined close to a pick'em last night, and I jumped all over Toronto. Looking at it right now, we are, still at just about a pick'em. You can get Toronto at -110. Looking at different books on this game, you can get Toronto down to -105 at WinBet. I like it. It's one that I wrote up last night for Gallery Sports. I like it quite a bit. Sometimes sometimes recent numbers can provide super vital betting information, and I like to lean on them often. In this particular spot, I think it's skewing us away from the reality of what's coming between these two pitchers. The reason I say that, Manoah's numbers are ugly. His baseball savant page is pretty ugly as well. But we know what he's capable of. We've seen it for several seasons now. He's a really good starting pitcher. And it kind of clicked for him in his last start against the Yankees. On the road in the Bronx, 7 innings, scoreless, 2 hits, 1 walk, absolutely dominated, went toe-to-toe with Garrett Cole in that start. That tells me that he's kind of right back where they want him to be. Last season, he pitched on the road in Seattle, 7.1 innings, 2 earned in that start. So, I think he's comfortable in this matchup. I think Manoah is a guy that you're going to want to be betting on for the time being. I think he's undervalued because of, a couple poor starts to start the season. On the flip side, I can't really argue that Luis Castillo hasn't been good. He's been really strong. He's been really solid. But, again, you look at the expected numbers with him, they're not quite as elite as what we've seen from him so far. His expected ERA is almost double that of his actual ERA. Mariners just 18th in WRC plus against righties. Meanwhile, Toronto's right up there in the top 5. They crush righties. I just think this is a spot where if Alek Manoah is the guy he's been for the last couple of years, and if he's anything like the guy we saw in his last start in New York, then this line is wrong. I think the only reason you're getting a minus 110 with Toronto is because he struggled in a couple starts early this year. I don't really buy into that. So for me, I think it's a great opportunity to get Toronto around to pick them at home against a team that they're as good, if not better than, with a really good pitcher on the mound. Why not? Next game we've got here Cleveland Guardians at Boston Red Sox. This is 917 918 on the betting card. Shane Bieber taking the mound for Cleveland against Nick Pivetta on the mound for Boston. Cleveland, a very small favorite here. Last I saw, minus 120. Let me get an updated line there. We are looking at Cleveland minus 125. So a little bit of money's coming on Cleveland. Shane Bieber's a guy, if you look at like his baseball savant numbers and a lot of his trending numbers, you can almost always make an argument with him that he's due for negative regression. His expected ERA is 5.13, but still that's a career outlier. And like I talked about with Manoah, I don't want to buy into that too much at the end of 1 month. So I'm not super sold on it, but he has allowed 3 or more earned runs in 3 of his last 4 starts. His results have been kind of just okay. The Red Sox have also scored 4 or more runs in 9 of their last 10 games. It's a hot offense, especially at Fenway. They hit the ball pretty well. You look at Shane Bieber, the one big positive with him, 6 or more innings worked in 4 of his 5 starts. Last season, 7 innings, 3 earned in his start against Boston. Pretty solid. Um, the other side with Nick Pivetta, his contact profile is pretty poor. He's got a 5.48 expected ERA that's actually worse than his 4.58 number overall. So that nothing about that's promising. He's not pitching very deep into games. So, as much as I think you look at Shane Bieber and you go, oh, maybe that's a guy I want to fade. Maybe he's overvalued because his expected numbers aren't very good. Pavetta's are worse. He just hasn't been very good. You look at his starts against Cleveland last year, 7 innings, 2 earned, 5 and 2/3 innings, 1 earned. Those are both good, right? But he gave up 16 hits in 14 and 2/3 innings with some walks as well. So, you can make an argument that he was pretty lucky in those 2 starts. Got out of some jams. I don't have great expectations for either starter here. If anything, I think I'd lean toward the over. But I like Cleveland's bullpen. Boston's bullpen has been a little bit better than expected as well. You look at these two teams against righties, Boston 10th, Cleveland 23rd in WRC plus. So no huge advantage there that makes me want to smash these teams against righties. So, if you put a gun to my head and made me play this game, I'd take the over, but I think I'm just going to sit tight and stay away from it. Next game, we've got Tampa Bay Rays at Chicago White Sox. Zach Eflin on the mound for Tampa. He's 3-0 with a 2.81. A lot better than he was in Philly. Lucas Giolito 1-2 with a 4.50 ERA. Over under 8.5 here. Tampa minus 148 favorite. That's the last number I saw last night as I was finishing up these handicaps. They're about minus 155 now. Numbers moved a little bit toward them. I get it. They've been a wagon this year. They're 21-5. Hard to argue with what they've done. They're top 2 against both lefties and righties in WRC plus. Taking a look at this matchup in particular, Lucas Giolito has been about league average across the board. His expected numbers look a lot like his actual numbers. What scares me with him, he's high variance. He'll look really good in some starts and he'll look absolutely terrible in others. He did get through 7 innings against Tampa on Sunday, which was encouraging, but he allowed 4 earned, got the loss in that one. So, eating innings is one thing, but it wasn't exactly in a winning effort. Kind of fell apart near the end. He's just not a guy I know what to expect. Zach Eflin has been really good since joining Tampa. The change of scenery seems to be working for him. His expected ERA 2.88. That backs up what we've seen from him so far. In his start, against Chicago on the 23rd, 5 innings, 1 earned, no walks, just 3 hits, really solid. He actually beat Giolito in that start. So, if this were lined close to pick over Tampa, I think Tampa, is probably the side that wins this game. But I'm not going to lay minus 155. Not really looking to lay a run line either. It's just one of those games where I think the line's reasonable. Neither bullpen's actually been very good at all. White Sox bullpen 24th in xFIP so far this year. Tampa Bay's 29th. That kind of surprised me to see. It's also worth noting we're still dealing with small sample sizes so far this year, so you got to take everything with a grain of salt in April. But yeah, I mean, look, I would take Tampa if the number was right, and it's not. So I'm just going to go ahead and stay away from this one as well. Got four more games to go through here. I do have two more bets still on the card to get to, so we're not going to sit here and pass on every game. But I am going to pass on this one. New York Yankees at Texas Rangers, 9-2-1, 9-2-2 on the betting card. Clark Schmidt takes the bump for the Yankees against Jacob deGrom for the Rangers. deGrom 2-0 with a 3.04. Schmidt 0-2 with a 6.30 ERA. Rangers minus 210 last I saw against the Yankees here. We get an updated number, looking at minus 230 now. It's weird, right, to see the Rangers at minus 230 over the Yankees in any capacity, but I think it makes sense when you look through the details on this game. Jacob deGrom, you look at his baseball savant stats; they're still absolutely godly. This is a 1.91 expected ERA, so you could argue he actually has positive regression due his way. And that's positive regression due on a guy that has allowed 4 runs in 23 innings pitched since his first start didn't go so well. So, not a whole lot to dissect with Jacob deGrom other than the fact that he's been his normal, excellent self. If you do want to bet Texas, I would stay away from their bullpen. Their bullpen ranks 25th in xFIP so far this year compared to 7th for the Yankees. So if you do want to bet Texas, the only way you can really do it in the first five is in the first 5 innings, but they're minus 277 in the first five. Even laying the half run, you're going to lay minus 170. It's just not good business to do that, especially not against the Yankees. They're a team that realistically can score against anyone. You never know. Quick look at the other side with Clark Schmidt. His contact profile has been terrible. I know he's a guy that has some promise, but it hasn't been there so far. His expected ERA about 6.17. He's allowed 3 or more runs in all 5 of his starts. 6 homers in 20 innings, 25 hits, 6 walks. I mean, the 6 walks aren't bad, but 25 hits. It hasn't been great. He'll probably come around, but he's made too many mistakes so far this year. If you really want to play here, you can look at the Rangers, lay the half run in the first 5 at minus 170, but it's too rich for my blood. I'm not doing it. I think, it's weird, and it should be, to see the Rangers at minus 230 over the Yankees. So I'm going to go ahead and sit it out. I also don't hate Yankees money line if you want to just say, hey, Yankees at 2-1. But it's not worth it for me. Phillies at Astros, World Series rematch from Houston tonight. Philadelphia is going to be a plus 132 underdog. Houston minus 147. This is game 923, 924 on the betting board. Aaron Nola, the righty, takes the mound for Philly against Framber Valdez for Houston. Framber Valdez beat Philadelphia twice in the World Series. A lot of familiarity, obviously, between these two teams from last October. Over under 7.5 here. I don't mind that total at all. Games at 8:10 tonight Eastern time. Taking a look, neither of these starting pitchers are producing really good leading indicators. Like if you look at the baseball savant pages for both of these guys, they look closer to average than anything else. Difference is that Framber Valdez has produced much better results to date than Aaron Nola has. Nola has actually struggled so far. He's allowed three or more runs in every single start that he's made. And Houston is playing pretty darn well right now. They took 2 out of 3 in Tampa over the week. They took 2 out of 3 in Tampa this week. They swept Atlanta on the road, and that was a hot Atlanta team last weekend. And before that, they took 2 out of 3 from Toronto. So Houston's been playing good competition and beating them. So they're not a team that I would suggest fading at the moment. You look at the bullpens. Houston's bullpen, quietly number 2 in the league in xFIP this year. I think a lot of their fans have been frustrated with their bullpen. It's been better than advertised. Brian Abreu's really come on for them. Phil Maton's been great. Outside of Montero, it's really been a pretty good unit. The other thing that's concerning with Aaron Nola, his last 3 starts, he faced the Reds, the Rockies, and the Marlins, and he's still allowing 3 runs or more in all 3 of those. Not exactly a murderer's row of lineups. That being said, Houston's only been average so far against right-handed pitching, And Aaron Nola is a guy who you're not going to hold down for very long. He's too talented. We've seen the track record with him for enough years now that I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, he's lost a step or he's not going to pitch well. He could bounce back any given game, and this very well could be that game. The Astros are still a little bit banged up, so I'm not saying let's jump all over the Astros here. I think the line makes sense with them at about a minus 150 favorite. Um, you look at Framber Valdez, his 4.20 expected ERA is just about the same as Nola's, but obviously, like I said, the results have been a lot better for him. One thing to caution you with Valdez, he has been the beneficiary of 5 runs that he's allowed being ruled unearned so far this year. Obviously, there's a reason for that. He's had some defensive issues behind him, but a lot of times when a guy has a lot of runs that are unearned against him, that's a sign of potential negative regression coming. We'll see if that's true with Fromber. He, like Nola, he's built up enough equity with fans where he's been really good for a few years now. Where I don't think, I don't think he's going to turn into a pumpkin either. So really similar handicap for me here to what I have with the Rays and the White Sox. If this were near a pick'em, I'd be all over Houston. It's not. I think the line's about right. I'm staying away. Got 2 more games to get to, both interleague games, and I've got action on both of them. The Angels are in Milwaukee to take on the Brewers. For those of you who haven't watched this program before, I must reiterate to you that the Angels are not from Los Angeles. They are definitively from Anaheim. We do not call them the LA Angels on this program because that's not what they are. They are not even from LA County. So the Anaheim Angels will be flying out of John Wayne Airport in Orange County to go play Milwaukee. At American Family Field, it's now called. Tyler Anderson gets the start for the Angels, a lefty against another lefty in Wade Miley. Anderson 1-0 with a 7.20 ERA so far this season. Miley 3-1 with a 1.96. So pretty big statistical difference right there to start. This game's 9.25, 9.26 on the betting board, 8:10 p.m. Eastern tonight. I'm playing Milwaukee on the money line, minus 130. Tyler Anderson left LA, he left the Dodgers, and he turned directly back into the Tyler Anderson he was before he was ever in LA. He was an all-star last season for the Dodgers. He's not going to be an all-star this year. He's getting shelled 3 consecutive starts, allowing 5 or more earned runs, 11 strikeouts, and 8 walks in 20 innings. He's not missing very many bats, 26 hits and 5 homers in 20 innings. Like I said, he's not missing very many bats. Guys are barreling him up pretty easy so far. Milwaukee hasn't been great against lefties, but I'm really not too worried about that against Anderson. I think they have the better lineup overall, and they're playing at home here. You look at why Anderson struggled. Obviously the expected ERA is around 6, so the numbers are legit. But his strikeout rate is down from 19.5% to 12%. His walk rate has doubled from last year. So whatever he found with the Dodgers last year, unfortunately for him, he seems to have lost. Now, on the flip side, the Angels are built to hit lefties well, but Wade Miley's been really good. The expected numbers for Wade Miley call for potential negative regression. His expected ERA is closer to 4. But he's only, there have only been 22 base runners against him in 23 innings of work so far this year, and that's while facing the Red Sox, Padres, Diamondbacks, and Mets. Those are all teams that right now look like pretty decent offenses. I know San Diego's struggling a bit, Mets are struggling a bit, but let's be honest about the talent that he's faced, and he's done it so far. I think right now I just have a lot more trust in him than I do in Tyler Anderson, and that Anaheim bullpen's been a mess. They surrendered 12 combined runs to the A's the last 2 days. They're just not getting it done. Milwaukee's bullpen, I think, is a lot more trustworthy. We know the talent that's down there. So this is just one of those spots for me. Angels' first game on the road trip right off of travel, and I think Milwaukee's the better side here with Wade Miley on the mound. So give me the Brewers minus 130. I wouldn't go very far past that number. I probably wouldn't pay if you're getting like a minus 145 or something like that, I wouldn't bother. I'd love to get a better number than minus 130, but at that number, it just makes the cut for me as a play. I've got 2 plays on this last game of the night. I know everybody has been, just holding their breath, waiting for the Cincinnati Reds to play the Oakland A's this year. It's just a matchup of absolute titans out west. Luis Sessa is going to take the mound for the Reds. 927-928, by the way, numbers here on the betting card. Sessa 0-3 with a 10.80 ERA, and that's backed up with a 10.06 expected ERA. So he has actually been that bad. Kyle Muller on the mound for Oakland, similar story. 0-2 with a 7.23 ERA. This game's lined right around pick'em. I got Cincinnati at plus 100. I like that play. I'm also playing the over at 8.5 here, and I will dive into why. Sessa has been preposterously bad. He is striking out less than 8% of hitters that he's faced this year. He's allowing an average exit velocity of 94 miles per hour. That's obscene. He's allowing an expected batting average of 377, an expected slugging percentage of 609. He's getting absolutely crushed by major league hitters. I just don't know how you can have high expectations for him as a starter. The only real solace, he looked pretty okay against Pittsburgh in his last start. Maybe he's turning a corner. He didn't walk anybody in that start. But, you look overall, not great. So why am I still on Cincinnati? Well, Oakland starter Kyle Muller has been awful in his own right. Obviously this is a guy with expected ERA 7.36, absolutely awful. 4 or more earned runs for him in 3 consecutive starts. 14 earned runs in his last 13 innings pitched. Put simply, I think these are 2 terrible starting pitchers. I think they will both give up plenty of runs, but Cincinnati's bullpen has been a lot better than Oakland's. Oakland's bullpen is the worst in baseball by far. You look at xFIP across baseball with bullpens. There's only one team that has an expected FIP higher than 5 in their bullpen. It's the A's. They're at about 6.5. So they're not only the worst bullpen in baseball, they're the worst bullpen in baseball by like a lot. The difference between number 1 and number 29 is pretty similar from the difference between number 29 and 30 there. You look at Mueller, expected batting average against him, 331. I think Cincinnati is the better lineup overall. I think Cincinnati is the better team overall. The bullpen's a little bit better. So 2 terrible teams, 1 bullpen that's a lot worse than the other. I'll take my chances with Cincinnati at even money. I'd make them a small favorite, but I love the over at 8.5. I think these starters are going to be awful. I think they're going to go to bad bullpen arms as the game goes along. I think this could easily be 9-7 Reds. So that's where I land on this game. That'll do it for today's show. To the few of you who stopped by to be a part of it, really appreciate you tuning in. I put a lot of work into it, and hopefully I can do a little bit better than I did with my 0-4 yesterday. Can't promise you anything, but I do think I'm going to win at least one bet today. So we'll see. If you tailed, let me know. If you're fading me, let me know. If you like the show, let me know. If you hate the show, let me know. I am at Dalton on Sports on Twitter. Feel free to say hello, give me your thoughts, whatever you got. And next week, hoping to have Brandon back with me, and we will let you know on Twitter when that show is coming up. So thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.